every Big Ten team's passable record expectations. So what I did is I went through and I thought, okay, what would be a passable record to the fan base? I'm not saying to the school or anything like that, but what would be a passable record for the coach, for the team, all these things, for the fans to say, okay, we're not exactly happy, but it's okay. You know, we're not gonna burn couches and throw things in the streets and stuff like that. So I'm just gonna go team by team. Illinois, I have at 6-6. I think a bowl bid signifies a successful season for them. Brett Bielema didn't get to a bowl last year, but they want to get to a 500 record. They have Eastern Illinois and Central Michigan on this out of conference schedule, so they should take care of those games, and they should be able to win a few more games in the conference, get themselves to 6-6. They don't have the hardest schedule in the world, so I definitely think that is a realistic expectation and something that would be passable. Obviously, I think Illinois fans 2 years ago had a very nice record. What was it, 8-4 for them? They would love to get back to that, and I don't know if they're going to get back there this year, but I think 6-6 they would be happy with. Indiana, I put 6-6, and I think that Kirk Cignetti is talking a lot, and he's getting the fan base very excited. I think that if Indiana doesn't make a bowl game, they're going to look at this guy a little bit and say, all right, dude, you talked a big game. Why didn't you back it up? I think 5-7 is probably their most likely record, but I could also see him getting to 6-6. I could see a chance for them to get to 7-5 as well, but I think the fan base wants a 6-6 record. Curtis Rourke, you're bringing in a lot of G5 guys who, have had very good careers, guys from James Madison. And I think that Kirk Cignetti is doing some good things in the recruiting trail too. So things are looking up for Indiana right now. I don't think it's outrageous to expect Indiana to get to a bowl this year. They can certainly make that happen. Iowa was a little tricky. 9-3 is what I went with. I think fans would tell you they probably want 10-2, but I think at the end of the day, if they get to 9-3 and they squeak into the playoffs as like an 11 or a 10 seed, I think that they're going to be much happier with that, especially if they are competitive, right? Iowa plays Ohio State and they have all these rivalry games and everything this year. But I think if the offense improves and they show some more competitiveness this year in some of their bigger games, obviously the Penn State game last year was just demoralizing, 31-0, but they do bring back 17 returning starters for this team. That is huge. A huge number of defensive starters are coming back. I think either 9 or 10 are coming back on the defensive end. So that is huge for them. Actually, it might be all, no, Cooper DeJean's gone. So it's either 9 or 10. I can't remember, but a lot of starters coming back for this Iowa team. It's going to be huge. They do have high expectations for them. I think if they do end up losing one more game and get to 9-3, they're good. They're feeling okay. But I do think that needs to be combined with a playoff appearance. I think the playoffs need to be something that they get to, or just say, we got screwed and the committee, doesn't like us or doesn't want us. So could happen either way. All right, Maryland, 7-5. I think that 7 wins would be solid for them. Mike Locksley, ever since 2020, has been able to increase slowly by slowly. He was able to get things to 7-6, 2021, and then 8-5 last year, or 2 years ago, and then 8-5 again this year. I think as long as they hover around those 8 wins with a bowl win, they're doing well. Mike Locksley 3-0 in bowl games since 2020. So if they can get 7-5 again and then win a bowl game, get to 8-5, I think the fans are going to continue to be happy. Fans check out toward the end of the year anyway because they kind of get really into basketball. I mean, we saw that stadium when Michigan came to town and they played him tough, but that stadium had a ton of Michigan fans in it. I think that was their 1,000th win. So obviously Michigan fans were going to come out for that one, but for them, I think Maryland cares far more about their basketball. And so a 7-5 season, I think Maryland fans would say, okay, that's fine. We got to a bowl game. It is what it is. Michigan 10-2. This is a little bit of a difficult one because you are coming off a national championship. I would think expectations might be a little bit higher, but with the loss of Jim Harbaugh and the strength and conditioning coach and so many other coaches leaving, I think there is a little bit more relaxation there and say 10-2. I think some fans would tell you 9-3, but I think at the end of the day, if Michigan loses their 3 big games, Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State, if they lose all 3 of those, I don't think they're going to be happy. I think there's going to be questions about if Sharon Moore can win the big game if that happens. I think they need to either beat one of those 3 teams. I think preferably for them, it's Ohio State. If they lose to Texas and Oregon, but they beat Ohio State, all is well. And Ann Arbor, I don't think anybody is unhappy. I think you make the playoffs, you're good, and they're ecstatic. They can continue their bragging rights and all that stuff. So if they get to 10-2, I think they're fine as long as, like I said, they win one of those 3 games. Even if they lose to Ohio State, I think they'll be okay. I think they'll be relatively happy as long as they beat either a Texas or an Oregon, which I kind of think they probably have the best chance to beat Texas in that one. I think Oregon's going to be a better team than Texas this year, but we'll see. We will see. All right, Michigan State 6-6. I think that Jonathan Smith coming in, Aiden Chiles. I think you look at the schedule, and I think you look at the amount of talent Michigan State has, and I think 6-6 is doable enough for them, so I'll go with that. And I mean, if they go 5-7, if they play really hard and they're competitive, I think fans will be okay. But for the most part, I think they want to start things off well with Jonathan Smith and see some improvement right away. Get Mel Tucker out the mind all the way, and just go forward, get to a bowl game and win that bowl game. Minnesota 6-6. I think that Minnesota fans think they could be better than this, but I think at the end of the day, the win total starting at 4.5, then raising up to 5.5. I think this was on Vegas. I think if they get to 6 wins, they will eventually be okay with it. I don't know if you ask a Minnesota fan, are you okay with 6 wins right now? If they're okay with it, but I think if they get to 6 wins in the way the season plays out, I think they'll be okay with it. It's an improvement over last year. You get to a bowl game again, and PJ Fleck, he beat Iowa for the first time last year, so that's something that he can hang his hat on. I'm sure that if you win 6 games, you'll have another kind of big game for them like that. That would be impressive to their fans that he would like as well. Nebraska, for as much hype as some people are giving them this year, I think at the end of the day, you just make a bowl game. I think Matt Rule makes a bowl game, and fans are like, all right, we did it. Hey, it's only one more win than last year. Maybe things could have gone better, but we finally made a bowl game. And win some close games, too. Win some close games. Don't lose every single close game out there. Win some close games, get to a bowl game, and I think the Nebraska fans will be happy enough with that. Now, I guess this would kind of be my hot take. Northwestern at 5-7. Northwestern fans, I think, are going to be living off the high of last year of going 8-5, a little bit with David Braun. That I think even if they miss a bowl game and they go 5-7, I don't know about 4-8, but at least 5-7, I think they're going to say, okay, it wasn't the season we wanted, but David Braun was still able to get to 8-5. The year before, and he's bringing in some new staff. Maybe it takes a little bit of a harder time getting those guys acclimated, working together on that kind of stuff, and they do give him a little bit of a pass and say, you know what, we're not too upset. It's all good. We'll be fine. Ohio State 11-1, I think, is a record Ohio State fans would be okay with, as long as that one is not to Michigan. If that one is to Michigan, Ryan Day might be in trouble, which is just absolutely crazy to think that a coach could go 11-1 and get fired. But that's what rivalries do in college football. But hey, that's why we love the sport, right? I mean, fans are crazy. They have their site Bucknuts, right? It's not Rational Observer, I think is the Dan Rubin guy is what he says. It's Bucknuts because they're crazy. And it's just kind of the way it is. Ohio State fans are wild. Ohio State fans are crazy, and I don't know too many of them that deny it. So I think Ohio State fans will be fine if they go 11-1, as long as that one is not to Michigan. And I think if they go 11-1, I think they still make the Big Ten championship game. They can still win that, and they can still go to the playoffs and win some games there. All right, Oregon. I think they're just happy if they make the playoffs. Just get to the playoffs because I think they believe in themselves enough that as long as they make the playoffs, they can make some noise there. Now, if they make the playoffs and they lose in the very first game, I don't think Oregon fans are going to be very happy. But I think that this year they should beat Washington. Dan Lanning can get over that hump. They make the playoffs, and I think Oregon fans are looking at it and saying, we are a playoff contender every single year. If they miss the playoffs, I think they have a little bit harder time with that. But even if Oregon goes 9-3, even though the schedule isn't great, I think with the hype, they should be able to get in still. 10-2, more preferably because of the schedule, but they should be able to get in at 9-3. Personally, that's what I think. Penn State, I realize 10-2 is kind of a funny thing because the fans seem to be upset with 10-2 every single year, but hear me out. I think that if Penn State makes the playoffs and goes 10-2, it's going to feel different for those fans than just the standard 10-2 before. They're going to have that idea of improvement. They're going to have that idea of, okay, well, we made the playoffs. We can get here. We can do this thing. And it's going to feel better than a 10-2 has felt the last few years for them. So that's my thought process there with Penn State. Purdue, I think that Purdue fans are excited and they believe in Ryan Walters, but I also think Purdue is a little bit in the same boat as Maryland, where eventually it's basketball season and you're just moving on with that. And 5-7 would be an improvement from last year for Purdue. And at the end of the day, that's what they would want to see more than anything is just some improvement. Rutgers has been a dark horse pick by Kirk Herbstreit to make the college football playoffs. However, I have them happy as long as they win 7-5. I think if Rutgers goes 7-5 and Greg Schiano wins another bowl game, they go 8-5 on the season. I think Rutgers fans are happy with that. I don't know if they're ecstatic, but I think they're fine with that. I do think that some of them are believing in the hype of this season, which I don't think is necessarily bad. I think they could get to 9 or 10 wins. But I don't think any Rutgers fan, at least the ones I talk to, maybe there's others out there, I don't think that they're getting to the point where they're expecting 9 or 10 wins, especially based off what the Big Ten has been like for them so far. So I think they are good as long as they sustain success and they are able to go into next year. And the recruiting definitely helps this year as well. They've had one of their best recruiting years of all time, and that helps them in a number of. All right, so UCLA at 6-6. I realize this is a little bit of a hot take, but I think if UCLA doesn't make a bowl game, they're going to revert pretty quick back to like it's the same as it was under Chip Kelly, which I don't think is fair. You know, Deshaun Foster's in his first year. He's getting into a new conference. He took over in February. I mean, it's a super late takeover for a coach. So for me, I don't think that 6-6 is the bottom of what they should be happy with. I think 5-7 is something you can be okay with. You certainly don't want to go 4-8, but 6-6 is what I think UCLA fans are going to want, because I do think it's working against Deshaun Foster a little bit that everybody was so upset with Chip Kelly when he left. Fans can have two reactions. They can have the reaction of, we're so glad that guy is gone and we're so glad we have the new coach. Or they can have the reaction of, man, that guy screwed us over. You better be better than this other guy. And I don't think it's fair, but from what I've seen and heard, that's kind of the vibe I'm getting personally from UCLA. USC, I think at the end of the day, USC's record is tough enough. Notre Dame, LSU, Michigan, all these hard teams, that I think USC fans are going to be happy if they go 8-4 and the defense looks much better. I think that's a big piece of this, and it's hard to envision USC going 8-4 and the defense looks much better, but I think it's possible because of how hard that schedule is and how many tough teams they're going to have to face. So I think this is another one of those situations where if I tell a USC fan you go 8-4 and you're happy, I don't think they believe me, but I think at the end of the season they go 8-4 and that defense looks better. They believe me. 9-3, obviously that's what they would want for a chance at the playoffs, but I think at the end of the season, if they go 8-4, they're going to be okay with it. Washington, 8-4 as well. I think that Washington fans are looking at what Jed Fish was able to do with Arizona, and they're saying, hey, you brought in a really good transfer portal class. Come here and do that. Now, I don't think this is the sentiment of what most other Big Ten fans think is going to happen with Washington. I think a lot of other Big Ten fans think the Washington's going to go 6-6, 7-5, possibly 5-7 if things really go wrong. But at the end of the day, I think that Washington fans are coming off this national championship appearance and they're saying, hey, we're okay if we don't make the playoffs, but we need to still be up there. We need to be winning 8-4, or we need to be going 8-4, maybe 7-5. I could possibly drop it down to that. But I think at the end of the day, if they go 7-5, I think there's going to be some questions about Jed Fish and what he's doing with this program. And there's going to be some thoughts about, can he continue to win here? Last one, Wisconsin, 7-5. Wisconsin is in a similar boat as USC, where I think if they just show that they are improving, fans are going to be happy. And 7-5 is a tough pill to swallow, but with how many tough teams they play, I think that fans are going to be understanding of it, and fans are going to say, it's all good, we get it. We're not exactly happy with it, but 7-5, we get it. We improved from last year. The team looked better, and we can go from here.